Eddie hadn't been in the theater. I was here in November. They asked me to come down and introduce Spartacus, probably my affinity for Charles McGraw. And we were looking around, and as we're looking around in the green room, which is kind of like a country club and bar, and remembering the old times, I was thinking of all the special times I've had in this theater with meeting people like Ricardo Montalban and Evelyn Keyes and Audrey Potter and Jack Palance, of whom I asked, Jack, what was it like working with Joan Crawford in Sudden Fear? And you saw this little smile, and he went, well, let's just say Joan was a consummate actress, and I'll leave it at that. Anyway, it is great to be back here. It is great to see all of you and so many friends, and 25 years of this, and there's no stopping us, and that's thanks to you, so thank you so much. A couple ad hoc announcements. Wednesday, we will be showing Black Tuesday, and don't ask me why we scheduled Black Tuesday on Wednesday, because Eddie scheduled it on Monday in Oakland, so I get Wednesday. But there's a special guest, Francesca Robinson, the granddaughter of Edward G. Robinson, who grew up with him and has a lot of stories. She will be our special guest and introduce that film with her grandfather in it on Wednesday. And Thursday, we're going to show the first film that we showed on what was called the first annual festival of film noir. We showed The Narrow Margin and Armored Car Robbery. Two of my favorites, certainly. And the guests were Richard Flesher, the producer Stanley Rubin, who became a dear, dear friend of Gemma and mine, and Marie Windsor were here in the house that night. And they're gone but remembered, but we will have Mark Flesher, Richard's son, who is a producer in his own right and has a rich store of memories. So those two guests will continue the tradition as we move on through the week. But now, we're going to continue the tradition of Cornell Woolrich with The Window. How many people have not seen this movie? Oh, I just love this. This is good. You're gonna love this. This movie, just to give you a little backstory on it, it was based on Woolrich's short story, The Boy Cried Murder. And I think from that title, you can kind of figure out what the movie is about. What's interesting is it was shot in New York and in Hollywood on sound stages. The exterior scenes were done in abandoned tenements on around 116th Street, what they used to call Italian Harlem, which had the biggest Italian-American community at one time, even bigger than Little Italy in New York City. And the film was done in November of 47 to mid-January 48. But then Howard Hughes bought RKO. And for those of you, any cinephiles familiar with Howard Hughes' stewardship of RKO, it's kind of like, not Dumb and Dumber, but crazier and crazier. And so the picture was shelved and was not released until 1949. The stars are the great Arthur Kennedy, Barbara Hale, and Bobby Driscoll, the young Bobby Driscoll, who got a special Oscar for his contributions as a young actor the same year as this, and it was primarily for this film. Believe it or not, this film cost $210,000 to make. And I think that's probably 2 weeks of craft services fees on a regular film now. Also is Paul Stewart, the great Paul Stewart. If I was going to cast a film and I had a boxing manager or a loan shark, I'd want to find Paul Stewart if he was still around. And his wife, Ruth Roman, as the horrible couple upstairs in the tenement. And they really pick up the film. I could talk more about the film, but what we have planned is something a little bit better. Is 10 years ago or so, I got to know Barbara Hale. She has since left the room, but I got to know her and I had her out to my festival in 2014 in Palm Springs, which, by the way, will be celebrating its 25th year on May 9th to 12th. Plug there. But at any rate, I thought, who better to talk about The Window than one of the stars of the film, and that's Barbara Hale. So with that, thank you again for coming. Enjoy The Window, but before The Window, this was quite a long interview. It's in 3 parts, but I basically distilled it down to 5 minutes. And there's a lot more of Barbara talking about Ray Burr and Perry Mason. It's all up on my website if you care to look at it. But here's Barbara Hale on The Window. Thanks again for coming. Hope to see you the rest of the week. Thank you.